Welcome to Halacha Brura. My name is Rabbi Nachum Chaimowitz, and the topic for today is Hadlakas Neiris, Hadlakat Nerot. How? What is the proper way? What is the proper procedure in how to actually light the candles? When Yaakov, our forefather, was preparing to leave this world, he called together his sons, and he said the following: Vayikra Yaakov abonav, and Yaakov called together his sons, Vayomer, and said, Hey Osfu, gather together, Ve'agidu lechem, and I will tell you, Isa sheyikra eschem ba'achris hayomim. Gather together, and I will tell you what will take place at the end of days. And what we're told is that Yaakov actually told his sons a good word of advice that would be necessary to do in order to hold strong at the end of days. Yaakov said to his sons, Hey Osfu, hold yourselves together. When it's going to come the end of the days, there's going to be a lot of disparity. There's going to be a lot of spreading out. There's going to be a lot of disconnection. Be strong and hold yourselves together. And when you be able to hold yourselves together, that will be a reason that you could be zoiche, that you could merit everything coming together in the final redemption at the end of days. Yaakov, as we know, had 12 sons. Each one gave birth to a whole tribe. Each tribe had their own approach at worshiping Hashem. They would do different things. Yisachar, we know, would learn Torah constantly. Zvulun, on the other hand, was out as a businessman. Yehuda was in the house of study, in the Bais Medrash. Yosef was running a whole country. Each one of the Shvatim, each one of the tribes, and their leaders worshipped Hashem in a different way. According to the great Kabbalist, the Arizal, there are actually 12 different gates above in Shemayim to receive the prayers of each one of the 12 different tribes, because each one has a different way of relating to Hashem. And so, it would seem that it's almost as if 12 different nations within one nation. How will we remain one nation? But here's the key. Yaakov said, hold together. Well, how do we hold together if we're all doing different things? The answer is, because those different things don't define us. It's our worship of God that defines us. Our worship of God is unified. When God gave the Torah, He gave us the way to determine unified halacha for the entire Jewish people. When we keep halacha, we literally unify and strengthen the bonds of connection between us and all the other Jewish people in the world. A lot of times people look around and they see there's so many different groups. There's a whole spectrum of different Jewish groups. And they seem to be worshiping God in such different ways, from one end of the scope to the other. How can they ever come together? How can they ever see eye to eye? And here's the key. It's halacha that holds us together. It's been very clear over the test of generations that those Jewish people, families, and communities that have held on to the halacha have been able to withstand the waves of the diaspora and be able to give over the message further throughout the generations until today. Those individuals, unfortunately, who were lax or weak in keeping the halacha, found it much more difficult to be able to continue to give over the message of Judaism to the following generations. It's halacha that really holds us together. It's halacha that unifies us even today at the end of days and is our key to be able to merit the final redemption together. And so each time we come together at these times and try to clarify the halacha, because unfortunately nowadays there's a lot of confusion in regard to the halacha. Some people don't have time to learn all the halachas. Other people, even if they've learned, they're not sure, it's not clear what they should do even after they finish learning. Some people, They try to learn, but there are so many details and it seems so complicated that it's just hard for them to remember. And unfortunately, at times they end up just not following through and doing the halacha as accurately as it should be. It's at these times when we get together that we want to accomplish together a certain level of clarity, that by the time we finish this session, we should be able to know what to do practically, even in one small area of halacha. And so, today the topic is Hadlakas Neiros. How? How's it done? We'll go over it in the form of points, maybe bullet points, in order that we should be clear as possible on how to do this very special mitzvah. As Shabbos approaches, the sun is going down on Friday evening. The Sanhedrin have instituted that every Jewish person, men and women, are obligated to light at least one candle. Customarily we light two, but we need to light at least one candle before the Shabbos comes in. How do we light it? What are the parameters of the act that's supposed to be done? So the first point that we'll go over is actually a good way to do the mitzvah. It's not obligatory. The first point is the following. It's appropriate when it comes the time to light Shabbos candles to already be dressed in the clothes of Shabbos. This we know because Shabbos is supposed to be done, everything about Shabbos is supposed to be done in a respectful way, in the most respectful and honorable fashion. So the first point where Shabbos descends to the world, at the onset of Shabbos, it's appropriate that for that act of lighting the candles, the person who's lighting be dressed already in Shabbos clothes. This is not obligatory though, and so therefore, if a woman who's lighting sees that the time has gotten late, it's getting close to the time of sundown, more important to light, even in weekday clothes, than to change to Shabbos clothes for the lighting. Very important not to light late. So it's good to plan ahead, if possible, change to Shabbos clothes. If it's not possible, a person should light even in weekday clothes. So that's the first point. When we come to light the candles, the person who's lighting should already be dressed in Shabbos clothes. The second point is, this is also something that's praiseworthy, not obligatory. The second point, in terms of how actually to light, is that it's praiseworthy that when a person lights the candle, they hold the match next to the wick until the wick catches a flame in and of itself. What does that mean? A lot of times it's very easy to light a match and you go quickly buy all the wicks and you just give it one spark of fire. Sometimes it lasts, sometimes it doesn't. But usually, if it's a good spark, it will sort of catch, over the next few seconds, it will catch the wick and build up to a nice clear flame. It's more praiseworthy, if possible, to actually hold the match next to the wick until the wick itself burns from its own strength. This we know because when God commanded Aaron, the high priest, who reigned at the time of the tabernacle in the desert, when God commanded him to light the menorah in the desert, God said, and hold your hand next to the wick until the wick burns in and of itself. So it's a very special way. It's a very respectful way of lighting. Obviously, if you have a very small match and it's going to burn a person's hand, it's going to burn your hand, it's not necessary to keep on holding the match. But, assuming a person has a long match, it is praiseworthy to hold the match near the wick until the flame lights in and of itself. So again, the first 2 points in regard to how to light is that ideally a person should be dressed already in Shabbos attire before lighting candles. Second point is that a person should ideally get long matches, hold the match next to the wick until the wick starts to burn in and of itself. But It is fine if that's not possible and a person just lights quickly, they still fulfill their obligation. But here's the third point of how we actually light. That's very important. The procedure for lighting is in two opposite ways between whether it's done by a man or a woman. Customarily, we know that women light, and the customary way for women to light is to first light the candles, then say the blessing, then say the bracha. By men, it's just the opposite. A man first says the blessing, and then he lights the candles. What's the reason for this? We know that the reason for making a blessing on a mitzvah is that we thank God for the opportunity to do this mitzvah before we're about to do it. If we want to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, or we want to read Megillah on Purim, first the chazan gets up and says a bracha on behalf of everyone. Thank you, God, for giving us the opportunity to blow shofar. And then he goes and he blows the shofar. Or on Purim, the chazan gets up, says a blessing on behalf of everyone. Thank you, God, for giving us the opportunity to read Megillah. And right afterwards, he starts to read Megillah. That's the proper procedure of a blessing before a mitzvah. However, in regard to Shabbos candles, there's a unique reality. The reason is because when a woman lights candles, officially, she receives the spirituality of Shabbos as she lights the first candle. Once she fulfills her obligation of lighting the candle, once that first candle caught a flame, now has descended the Shabbos upon her. Comes out according to that once she lights one candle, or even in the midst of her lighting, it would then be prohibited for her to even finish the act. She wouldn't be able to light any other candles. She might not even be able to finish that act because it's already now Shabbos for her. And one of the prohibited activities on Shabbos is to light a flame or extinguish a flame. And so therefore, it would be a problem for her to make the blessing and then go and light. And therefore, customarily in halacha, it's been flipped around, switched around. What a woman does customarily is first she lights the candles, because it's still weekdays for her. Then she makes the blessing and accepts the Shabbos. How is it possible to do this? Usually the blessing is supposed to come before fulfilling the mitzvah. And the answer is, we know that the candles are there specifically in order to benefit from them. A person must benefit from the candles. So getting enjoyment from the candlelight is really part of the mitzvah. And therefore, customarily, when a woman lights, she lights all the candles and she covers her eyes. By covering her eyes, at that moment, she is not receiving any benefit from the light of the candles. She pronounces the blessing, she says the bracha, and then she removes her hands from her eyes and receives the benefit from the candles. So it's considered as if she does the mitzvah after making the blessing. This is all true when women light. In a case where a woman is not at home and the man of the family has to light, so then he follows the regular rule, which is first make the blessing and then do the mitzvah. He says the blessing, thank you, God, for giving us the opportunity to light the candle of Shabbos. And he goes and lights. Because by a man, we don't assume that he accepts Shabbos when he lights the candles. The actual time for accepting Shabbos for a man is shortly before the sundown. Shortly, about 2 minutes before sundown is the time when a man usually accepts Shabbos. He can accept it certainly before. He can accept it at the time of lighting, but if he is lighting, he should not accept it at the time of lighting because it will become Shabbos for him. So a man who lights, says the blessing, and then lights. It would be unnecessary for him to cover his eyes because he's doing it in the regular form. So again, to go over these points. The first point was that it's preferable that the person lighting candles should already be dressed in Shabbos clothing before lighting. The second point is that when actually lighting the candles, one should preferably hold the match to the wick until the flame burns on its own accord, on its own strength. Thirdly, if a woman is lighting, she first lights all the Shabbos candles, covers her eyes, pronounces the bracha, and then removes her hands from her eyes. If a man is lighting, he first says the bracha, and then he lights the candles. The next point in halacha that's connected to all of this is that because we assume that a woman accepts the Shabbos upon lighting the candles, it follows that once she lights candles, she will not be able to do any more work. It won't be possible for her to do any work if she's lighting Shabbos candles. And so therefore, we know that the time of lighting Shabbos candles customarily is about 18 minutes before the sun goes down. For 18 minutes, still everyone else in the house is still doing work. But she can't do work anymore because she just lit Shabbos candles. What happens if she sees that there was a flame that she left on? It's going to burn the pot of food. Or there's a flame that she didn't turn on. Or anything else in the house that's connected with the prohibited activity. Can't she do it anymore? And the answer is no. She's already accepted Shabbos. However, in such a case, it is permissible in halacha for her to ask or tell someone else in the house to do the act. Even though in Shabbos itself, we wouldn't allow a Shabbos observer to tell someone else, even a non-Jew, to do something that's prohibited on Shabbos. It's not allowed as a rabbinic restriction. In this case, where a woman accepted Shabbos earlier, before sundown, and she herself can't do work anymore, she would be allowed to tell others from the family to do work that's necessary. Connected to this idea is that the girls of the family customarily try not to do any work from the time that mother has lit. Out of honor and deference for mother, they don't do actual prohibited acts in the vicinity of where mother could see. So if a girl finds that once mother has lit and she still has 18 minutes till sundown, and she needs to do some sort of act that she wouldn't do on Shabbos, she should do it in a discreet way. She should do it in a way where it's not obvious or in front of mother's sight of vision once mother has lit the candles. The next thing that applies from all these rules is that being that mother has accepted Shabbos, once she lights, is would she be able to put out the match? So on Shabbos, this is not an issue. Because on Shabbos, the rule is that she lights the candles beforehand, and then she says the blessing. So on Shabbos, once she lights the candles, she could put down the match or put out the match. It's still weekday for her, and only once she says the blessing that she accepts Shabbos. But in the case of Yom Tov, it's different. On Yom Tov, we know, even though there are prohibited acts that are prohibited throughout the entire day of Yom Tov, there are certain acts that are permissible on Yom Tov that are not permissible on Shabbos. One of the acts that's permissible on the day of Yom Tov, on a holiday, is to be able to light something, to ignite something from an already existing fire. It's not possible to create a new fire on Yom Tov. It's not possible to go and strike a match on Yom Tov. That would be prohibited. But to take from an already existing fire, for example, the fire is burning on the stove, or a person left a candle that's burning for the entire Yom Tov, one would be allowed to take a match and draw from that fire and light something else. And so therefore, there are women who on the day of Yom Tov have the custom of lighting candles even once the Yom Tov has already entered. Because the act of lighting on Yom Tov is not something prohibited if the fire is taken from a source that already exists. So once again, on Shabbos, a woman first lights, then says the blessing. On Yom Tov, there are women who first say the blessing and then light, even on Yom Tov itself. Or, before Yom Tov at least, they first say the blessing and then light. Vice versa, there are also women who have the custom to do the same as they do on Shabbos so as not to get confused. They light beforehand and then say the blessing. Each person should follow whatever the custom of their family is. In any case, If a woman has the custom on Yom Tov of saying the blessing and then lighting, the question is, what does she do with the match? Because we're not allowed to extinguish on Yom Tov. Even though you could light a fire from existing fire, you're not allowed to extinguish. So therefore, if a woman said the blessing, she lit the candles and has now accepted Yom Tov, she needs just to put down the match on a non-flammable surface and allow it to go out itself, not to put out the match. Let's review shortly what we just spoke about. How is the procedure? What is the procedure of lighting the candles? The first thing we learned today is that a person should preferably be dressed in Shabbos attire before lighting the candles. The second point for today is that a person should preferably hold the match next to the wick until the candle starts to burn in and of its own. The third point of how to do lighting of candles is that a woman customarily on Shabbos first lights the candles, covers her eyes and says the blessing, and then opens her eyes and gets benefit from the candles. A man, if he's lighting, first says the blessing and then lights the candles. On Yom Tov holiday, there are two variations of custom. Some women do on Yom Tov like every Shabbos. They first light the candles and then say the blessing. And some women say the blessing and light the candles on Yom Tov, since that's permissible on Yom Tov to light a fire from a fire that's previously existing. For such women who say the blessing and then light the candles on Yom Tov, it would be necessary just to put the match down, not to extinguish it. A practical aspect that's connected, that enhances the halacha, validity of lighting on Shabbos, is a unique word of advice that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein would tell his Rebbetzin before Shabbos. We learned in a previous study, in a previous session, that we have today electric lights. And because we have today electric lights, a lot of the light that we receive by our meal, a lot of the pleasure on Shabbos, really comes from the electric lights. So said Rabbi Moses Feinstein, of blessed memory, he said to his wife, we want the electric lights also to be included in your blessing for Shabbos or Yom Tov. And so therefore, right before you go and light the candles, what you should do is go over to the lights in the room where you're going to be eating, or whatever lights you're going to be doing on Shabbos, and say Lekavod Shabbos. Turn on the switch after you say Lekavod Shabbos. So those lights will also be considered as if you lit them in honor of the Shabbos. And then go and light your candles and say the blessing, and the blessing will then include all the lights that you lit, including the electrical lights. This is not obligatory, but a very good custom to have. Because, as we see, a lot of the light today that we get is really from the electrical lights. And the purpose of the Sanhedrin instituting the laws of Adlakus Neiros was in order to enhance our Shabbos through the light. So whatever we light up before Shabbos comes in to enhance our Shabbos should really be included in the mitzvah. That would be a good way of doing it. To first say Lekavod Shabbos, light the electrical lights, and then go to light the Shabbos or Yom Tov candles. May God help, and we'll be able to fulfill this mitzvah in its proper format, in its proper time and place, with the proper intent, so that we'll be able to keep the halachas properly and precisely, even in one area, and strengthen the ropes of unity that hold us together and are really our major key to merit redemption in our days.